Hello and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherry Davidoff,
I'm Matt Duran.
and today we're going to talk about the Meta hack. Meta announced recently that over 20,000 Instagram accounts were compromised. And Matt, tell us about this sophisticated cyber attack.
Sophisticated.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a strange way to describe that.
I imagine like Trinity in the Matrix at the keyboard with her advanced hacking skills.
You would think that, but no. This was realistically people going to Instagram's automated AI chat support platform and just asking it to reset the password for accounts for them.
Oh,
that's really what it was.
Well, it's interesting because this is being spun as an AI hack, which makes it sound like Echo Leak or something very sophisticated and advanced.
Yeah,
right.
No.
In reality, it was just like a help desk hack,
yeah.
Except instead of targeting humans, it was targeting the AI support chatbot.
It was targeting Meta's AI, which is meant to provide front-to-back services. So, no intervention from an agent needed. You can do everything you need with the AI, and attackers took advantage of that.
Meta took it down,
at
least briefly.
They did.
They did say that they were going to review the authentication process. But this is a great example of, number one, how attacks have evolved and how they're staying the same.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we have seen over the past few years that attackers are targeting your help desk over and over again.
Not a new tactic, just a new target.
I mean, as soon as I heard this, I thought, oh my gosh, this is just like MGM. If you remember the MGM hack.
Oh, I remember it well. Yeah.
I mean, that really brought help desk hacks into the public consciousness because, of course, attackers targeted MGM. They were able to reset an employee's account using the help desk. The hackers claimed that it took less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And from there, they took over. I mean, they burned it with fire. Everything was down at MGM.
Yeah, I think it was, there was a post on Twitter that I think summed it up better than anything else. It said that a $10 billion company like MGM was defeated by a 10-minute phone call.
Yeah, and estimated $100 million worth of damage. So this was huge.
It was big.
People couldn't even use credit cards at the resort. Sorry, we always go down and stay at MGM properties for Black Hat in Las Vegas, which is coming up. Say hi to us if you're one of the people out there that attends Black Hat or DEF CON or things like that. We're teaching a class. So it's hard for me to imagine the casinos not taking credit cards, but that's where they were. They were at a standstill.
Well, and there was a lot of fallout from that too. I mean, just the fact that it was showcasing the vulnerability that a help desk could have, and also the people who go to the hotel. I mean, there's a reason why DEF CON can't go to Caesars anymore, and well, that's part of it.
Yeah, and so fast forward to today, we have over 20,000 Instagram accounts compromised, and you would think that an AI chatbot would be more difficult to trick, but no, it was just the opposite.
Why would you think that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you expect because we think humans are fallible and AI is superhuman, but in reality, it's designed to please,
well,
it's designed to serve the customer.
It's the same problem we see with AI-generated code. So remember that, AI is not some omnipotent being that just knows the right thing to do at all points in time. It has to be trained.
Yep.
And just like with vibe coding, I mean, it is trained on what people have already done. I mean, with Meta's AI, I would be willing to bet, I don't have this as a fact, but I'd be willing to bet that it was probably trained on the, glut of data that Meta already had about customer service interactions, and it was made to emulate one of those customer service agents, or at least something that was similar to it. And if they make mistakes, that gets trained into the AI, which we saw here, it made mistakes.
This is just reminding me of when we chat with our customers in the bank industry. We'll do a phishing assessment and we come out with the results and they're often shocked, like, oh my gosh, 10% of our employees clicked that link or answered a question over the phone and gave out their password. And the reality is that we hire humans who are helpful and friendly and trusting because those are the social skills we need. And AI tools have that same push-pull in terms of incentives. They want to help and they're trained to help, but at the same time, they're also trained to have some guardrails. And the question is, can an adversary manipulate that to get what they want?
Well, what was the quote you sent me? It was helpful and exploitable are the same term, but from different sides of the coin,
that's true. That's true. And there was another angle to this, actually. They did have a security control in place that we are aware of.
Sure.
And that was locations. So Meta would actually check the target's location, whoever was calling in, to make sure that it matched what they were expecting for that account. And so what did the adversaries do? Well, they went and used a VPN that would pop out right at the location where the account, they expected the account would live.
Yeah, if the account is from Atlanta, it's not hard to get a VPN that comes out of Atlanta.
Out of Atlanta.
Exactly, yeah.
But once they had bypassed that, it was really game over. They then provided the chatbot with information about a new email address, and the chatbot sent the password reset link to the new email address, and voila, they were done. The victim didn't get any communication. They didn't have to contact them at all. It was game over at that point.
Well, yeah, and that's the interesting thing when they were talking about the attack chain here. They got into the standard account recovery process and
Yeah.
basically just bypassed the entire thing and told the AI, "I don't have access to that email. Just link my new email account." And the
Yeah.
AI just said, "Okay."
Well, I saw somebody, a security expert, saying a human would never have done that. And I was like, oh, no,
Oh
some of them
no,
would have.
they
Some of
do
them
it
would have.
frequently. Yes.
Yeah, and the problem is we need to remember that AI is fallible as well. This reminds me so much also of the Pocket OS case, which I know seems very different on the surface. So, for those of you that may not have seen our recent episode, 9 Seconds to Zero,
Mhm.
there was a company that provided car rental reservation tracking services.
Yeah.
And their whole production database was destroyed by an AI bot in 9 seconds. So it was troubleshooting an issue. It found a token that gave it administrative access, and it decided instead of like carefully debugging this, it was just going to like nuke everything from orbit and
Yeah.
restart.
Well, I mean, that calls back to what we oftenly refer to as, overly permissive,
Yes, that's
abilities
where I
inside
was
of a system.
going.
Yeah.
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 And I think what we need to remember is when we roll out AI, you have to actually limit its privileges in a
Sure.
very deterministic way. So don't trust the AI to limit itself. There are still ways to programmatically limit its permissions.
Hmm.
In the Pocket OS case, it had blanket administrative access, and the owners of the company didn't even realize that. So it's important to make that visible, to audit it, to make sure you have that extra constraint, and expect that the AI will try to break out of its box. Make sure it can't do that.
Well, I mean, to their credit, in its out of the box state, it didn't have those permissions. When they asked it to actually troubleshoot, it scanned the network and it found a token
Yes.
that gave it the permissions to
It's
do that.
very
So, yes.
wily. And that also gets to crossing the T's and dotting the I's when it comes to cybersecurity. I don't know about you, but for years and years, when I travel through airports, I see the big billboards that are like, security solved, and they have some cool fancy new firewall or
Mhm.
next gen, whatever. Really, security is solved by doing things like making sure you don't have passwords or keys sitting in open file shares. And little details like that
I mean,
really make all the
it's the
difference.
simple stuff that ends up killing you in these
It is the
situations.
simple
Yeah.
stuff. And in this case, the AI just crawled and found a token and used it.
Yeah.
So we need to treat AI like an insider threat.
Yeah, no, but I mean, back to Meta. I mean, the big problem they had here was that there was no secondary verification step in
Yes.
between reset my account and reassign a new email.
Right.
I mean, they got to that stage of the process, and the AI, based on its training and its permissions inside the system, was able to just override what we would normally consider a security control at that point, and just allow them to send a password reset email off to wherever they wanted it to go.
I think this is called the confused deputy problem, where AI is doing its best, but it is just confused and
Yeah,
you've given it a lot of power.
yeah, exactly.
So with that, what are our key takeaways here? What do we learn from the Meta incident?
Well, from the Meta incident, we learned a couple of things. The first thing we want to talk about is red teaming. So you want people to test ways to break your AI before it goes out into your production workflow.
Yes.
And we've seen this in multiple different instances where Meta itself has had problems with their AI before, with it, acting as a security engineer and answering questions inside of a support forum or something like that. If you give it too much power, it can make mistakes. It is fallible, just like the training data that you fed it, which again is largely
Right.
human based. And if you have someone attack it and find ways to exploit that and then tell you about it before it hits production, you can stop things like this from happening.
Well, and red teaming AI is different than red teaming like a traditional web application. And
Yeah,
we're learning that as part of LMG's penetration testing team because you may be using natural language when you're red teaming your AI. You may
right.
be looking at things like prompt injection instead of trying to exploit vulnerabilities. I mean,
Mhm.
we still want to try exploiting vulnerabilities, but we need to move to that next layer.
Well, we've seen from multiple different vulnerabilities that have been released that there are multiple different ways to trick AI into doing things it's not supposed to do.
Hmm.
If we look at like Cofish or something like that, I mean, those
Yes.
those are those are ways that like the AI is acting the way that it's intended to act. It's just being used in a malicious way.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly. Stage permissions, like a probation period. So don't just instantaneously trust your new AI tool. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm tempted to do that as well, but
sure.
treat them like a new employee that you're just getting to know, and minimize privileges until you really understand how it works. And honestly, even when you understand how it works, know that AI is fallible and you need to limit those permissions.
Yeah, I mean, Meta granted end-to-end authority to their AI system like on day one of rollout here, and
Right.
that was the problem. I mean, it wasn't in service that long before people started to figure
It's a
out they could game
vision.
it. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
vision, but
Yeah.
you need to, under the hood, make sure that there are some
Yeah.
restrictions.
The next thing you want to do is make sure that you were enforcing identity controls in not just the model itself, but in all of the deterministic code that it's using.
Yeah.
And this becomes a problem if you're really trying to rush an application out into production. You don't have the time to identify whether or not there is a break in the identification chain at that point.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, I mean it's a fairly simple test to run. It does take time to do, but we see it skipped a lot. Like PocketOS is a great example of that. There was an assumption based on the very explicit instructions they gave their AI that it would not make changes to the production database and it would not delete anything without asking. And it broke through both of those controls,
And then it
and
confessed.
then it
You could
confessed.
almost hear it crying in its confession. If you
Yeah.
haven't seen that episode, go back, take a look, 9 seconds to zero.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay, make sure you are scoping every credential and action that an agent can reach. So, again, it's back to that principle of least
Yeah.
privilege. Make sure you know what permissions and what privileges the AI has and limit it and really define it.
And the last thing you want to do, I mean, we can't cut humans completely out of the chain at this
We
point.
can, but it's not a good
Yeah,
idea.
yet anyway. But for the time being, I mean, if you're using an AI agent that's going to be able to do things like reset account passwords or provide authentication data or something like that, there needs to be some kind of a human in the path that the AI can't lock out. It can't go end to
Right.
end. Yeah,
I don't think we touched on that yet. So when people were locked out of their accounts, their Instagram accounts, they could not reach a real human.
right.
They just got back into the AI chat support because that was what was supposed to be handling their account end to end and all their problems.
Yeah.
And well, we have a bootstrapping problem there. So make sure you have some kind of escalation path that involves a human. We're not, as a society, ready to take humans out of the loop yet.
Yeah, no, we talk in our tabletops a lot about out of band communication and recovery, especially if we're
Yep.
talking about something like Microsoft 365. If you don't have like if somebody gets into your account and they lock your admins out, what is your recourse at that point?
I'm
And now
sorry, Matt, I can't do that.
exactly. Now,
Yeah.
I personally, I have been through Microsoft's technical support system like countless times, and to get an actual person on the phone, like I've found the hack to it. You literally just have to yell at it, but getting someone on the phone to actually help you is a difficult thing to do, and a lot of people will get lost in those AI or IVR systems,
Right.
and there's not much it can do to help you at that point because it's not really set up to do that.
But at least there is a path. So
Yeah,
that's one thing that we learned from the meta hack. Make sure you have a path to involve a human whenever necessary.
yeah, there you go.
All right. Thanks so much for tuning in to Cyberside Chats. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.